Don't tell me I'm on. Didn't even know I was on. Hello, this is Dee with Unplugged Grief Ministries. I am here today to present to you how to become an effective comforter. I did have a slideshow, but my computer is deciding to play the little devil with me. So it doesn't want to pop up, and I spent 6 hours working on it today. So I'm like a little upset because I did all that work and I can't show forth of it. And I'm about ready to throw this thing out the window. So I'm going to have to play it by ear. I want to come to you and tell you about what to do and what not to do because I'm sure you're hearing it a lot. And a lot of the coaches that are speaking today that we're talking about the effects that we have when we lose someone and the response that we're getting from loved ones that come into us and give us these comments or statements they make. And although they have good intentions of telling us something good, um, although they have good intentions of being a good comfort to us, a lot of times they say things that end up hurting us, the grievers, hurting you, the griever, or me, the griever, more than they are helping. And it's really sad because they don't realize that they are doing that. And so I'm going to share with you some of these wonderful things, and especially the four major, there's four majors of the do nots that I want to have you listen to. And I'm sharing this from one of my greatest mentors, Dr. Norman Wright. He was when I first lost my son, 2014. So I was trying to figure out for the longest time why a lot of my relatives and friends, including church family, some, not all, was lacking that kind of emotional support. I think they were pretty much thinking, especially by the time 2015 had come along. I mean, 9 months, 10 months, a year later, they were thinking that by now I probably should have gotten over it, moved on. But as we as parents who lost children or any loss of a loved one, even if you didn't lose a loved one. Sorry, my voice is hoarse. That's what happens when you're trying to make sure everything is done right. And no matter how hard you work to get things done right, something still goes wrong. Anyway, they think that you should have by now moved on. And when you haven't, they start to make these, what I like to call stigma comments with grief and even with mental health. And they even look at you as being crazy. I'm sure you're going to hear it from a lot of parents who've lost children. And it's weird that we all come to the same page and we all come from all walks of life. Some of us never met, but we all share almost the same story, that we have family and friends, church family, community, co-workers, whoever. We think that by now we should have moved on. Maybe we should have. And maybe some people were ready to. And maybe some people are not ready to. And what society has taught all of us is that grief is like a dirty word. Not like the curse word, but like a dirty word. So in other words, if you are grieving and they don't want to know it and they don't care to know about it, they pretty much want you to go to your room like a child. Go to your room. We don't want to hear about it, you know. So for the longest time, I couldn't figure out why family, friends, church, family, everybody. It was like, where's everybody? Where are all these people who promised at the funeral and even before, if you ever need me, call me or email me. Don't forget to text me. And it's like suddenly they all vanished. They disappeared. And I'm like, where did everybody go? It was strange. And I hear this story. Here it is 8 years since Timothy's passed. And I'm still hearing this story from parents who just recently lost children. So this is not an old story. This is still happening in today's day and age, sadly, unfortunately. So I began to do a lot of research, trying to figure out what was going on. And I started to dig in and dig in and dig in. And like some of the others you probably heard here, studied books, read books, got into it, even went to a couple of grief coaches, not grief coaches, grief classes, grief seminars, did the work, went to a therapist, saw a therapist, not necessarily a grief therapist, the whole works. And it didn't come to my attention to begin to realize what was going on. And it took I think the fall of 2016 or the winter 2016, 2017. And I began to realize that the reason why that they all vanished, didn't call, didn't write, didn't email, didn't come to visit, at least many of them did not. There was very few, I have to give credit, that still showed some kind of emotional support, but did not totally always understand my grief as a parent. So I mean, they showed some support, but they still had a lot of criticism and judgment about my grief. So by the fall, winter of 2016, 2017, I began to realize what was going on, especially after I'd gone through extensive training and learning and studying and researching and pulling my hair out. Don't ask me why, but it's true. That what it was is that all these people that had made all these promises were, and I'm going to say the word all, uncomfortable with your grief. Yes, they are uncomfortable with your grief because they are taught to, instead of showing you of being an effective comforter, that it's better to run, hide, and vanish and be uncomfortable than to be that effective comforter for you. So one of the things that I've learned is what to say and what not to say, and I gotta get rid of this background. This background is terrible. I'm sorry. I just have to get rid of it. Thank you. Just freaking me out the way it was doing things. So someday you're gonna have, and if you haven't already, you may have a friend that may come up to you and they're gonna tell you that they have a problem that they're encountering, and you're gonna probably wonder, what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do? But you know, as Christians, we are taught to show Christ's love in the comfort that we provide, the comfort and the supports that help those who have difficulty in enduring their loss. And we are called as Christians to minister upon those who grieve, to be comforters. And I know there are some people that are going to say, no, that's just not me. Well, if you don't think it's you, then it's not your place. You're not that person. And you are going to know if you are that person. You are going to know if you are that person. But you don't know if you're that person until you learn the principles of how to become an effective comforter. And one of the things that I learned when I was taking all these courses and all these classes, I was number one, the reason why I was doing it was because I needed it for me. I wasn't thinking about everybody else right now. At that moment, I was thinking about what can I do to help myself? Because there was this one support, big, great organization, support for parents who lost children. And it was like they were stuck. I hate to say this, and I know it's not a real good word to use, but I don't know what other word to think of. But it was like they were stuck grieving all the time. It was like they did not want to move forward and find a new joy, find a new life. Because I believe you can still grieve for your child, but you can grieve for your child in a new way. Find that new joy, that new love. Do something in memory of your child. So here are the four majors of the do nots that we need to think about as we learn to become an effective comforter. Now, I'm reading from a book, I'm compiling this information from a book that really inspired me. And it's from the last chapter. And I purposely did this. But if you take my course that I have, you will have an 8-week course that will go through the whole thing of the textbook. And it will really inspire you. It really opened up my heart. It opened up my heart so much to realize that I too needed to make this change for me, because when I was done with this and everything that I'd gone through, I realized, ooh, you mean all this time I too was a miserable comforter? You see, we were all born as miserable comforters, but we don't have to stay as miserable comforters. We can choose to step out of that quicksand and go into something that's fresh, blue, Jamaican, Hawaiian, whatever that tropical, blue, cool water, and enjoy that sand. Not the quicksand, but the sand that feels good to our feet, the sun that feels good to us. So the 4 major do nots is: do not withdraw from your relative or your friend, okay? The second one is: do not compare, do not evaluate or judge the person or their response. We're going to go into this deeply in a moment. Do not look for sympathy for yourself. And do not patronize or pity the person, the griever. So it's really important that we realize that these 4 major do nots is important to understanding how to be that effective. If you want to be a real good, effective comforter, listen to this, because it will give you the highlights of the good things that we all do for ourselves. Okay? So here we go. Do not withdraw. What do you think do not withdraw means? I know I can't hear you, but I want you to think for a moment. So in case there's a loss, any kind of a loss that we go through, okay? It doesn't necessarily have to be a death. It could be a broken relationship. It could be I hate to say this, some people don't want to hear this, but we're going to talk about it on the second do nots. But we don't want to withdraw from someone who's going through. Many people are going to understand what I'm saying here. When you have that immediate loss of a loved one, whether it's a spouse, parent, a sibling, a child, you need someone you can trust that would not only listen to you as the griever, but someone you can trust. Someone that will not walk away when they think you've not gotten over it. And what a lot of people don't realize is that some people, they have a very difficult time moving forward. And I know as we speak more and talk about different things about grief, and most like what you've been hearing from the other speakers here, is that we all come to agreement that there is a purpose. And I know some people don't want to hear that. That's okay. But just listen so you understand why I'm saying this. People come into our lives and people leave. I'm not talking about just by death. People come and go. We all know that. Well, unsadly, there's some people who come and some people go and don't come back. And they need to be able to know that they trust you enough. And it's sad when nobody calls you, nobody writes, nobody texts you, nobody comes by, nobody even comes to visit. And the worst part of it is that the loneliness feels even worse. And that it even feels, what's the word I want to use? It's like people are assuming that we recover from loss immediately. There are some losses we might, yes, and there are other losses some people may not. So don't always assume that people have gotten over their loss. Because when you assume, you make the mistake of realizing that maybe they haven't. You can usually tell, well, not always, you can usually tell by their behavior, but sometimes people have a tendency of hiding that. They cover up. They don't want you to know that they're still grieving. So it's always good to check in to make sure that they're okay. I know quite a few times there have been church members that I've known that have had siblings that have passed away, or in-laws, or somebody like that. And I still always checked in with them to be sure. And while during the pandemic, a lot of times I was not aware if someone had passed away. So I did not know how or who to check in with, because it was never brought to my attention as part of the grief ministry. But if I do, I always try to have I try to make it a habit of checking in with them to make sure they're okay. And I know for me, it seems like there's that tremendous feeling of isolation. When I remember when my son died, out of the, believe it or not, it's now 8 years, and not once has my sister from Orlando come up to see me here. She was up to help me move from out of the storage unit into the U-Haul truck, but not once has she come to my home. And out of the 5 years I was at Judy's house, she never came. No, I can't tell you how many times I've been to her place since my son passed away. But not once did she ever come up to visit me. And unto this day, I've moved into my own place, and I've been here for 6 months, and she still hasn't been here. So my question is, what are you so afraid of? What are you so afraid of that? Do you feel like that I by now should have moved on, moved forward? Or I should have gotten, I'm repeating things that was repeated to me. And it's like, I am a mother, a woman. God created us women for a reason. And He created our emotions for a reason for us. He made us mothers for a reason, because He knew that we would be the ones that would nurture our children, protect our children, love our children. The bereaved individual needs comfort on a consistent basis. They need to be able to talk about what their concerns are and what they need to reminisce on. And they need to even talk about both death and divorce and the major decisions that needs to be made in all types of losses. A support group needs to be made immediately, needs to be done immediately. Because a couple years ago, my father passed away. And I have to applaud my stepmother. She really knew. She lost a spouse. But she knew who to go to and where to get that support. And she stuck with it. And her church family stuck with her. They didn't abandon her. And whenever she needed help at the house, there was somebody there. And if somebody needed to get her driveway, somebody was there. Somebody needed to come and chop some trees down, or mow the lawn for her, somebody was there. That's what I call effective comforting. Because she had friends and church families that was there for her 99% of the time. She had no other family except us stepkids. I live in Florida. Me and my sister can't travel, especially when the pandemic happened. We couldn't go up. And the closest relative was my other sister. And I don't know what to say. But she had consistent support through her church family. Her church family knew how to become an effective comforter. They were there. They did everything they were supposed to do to help her. And that I give them 5 stars for. Because that's the way our church family should be. That's the way our family should be. Is to be there. Not to withdraw, not to walk away, not to vanish, but to be there for her. I talk to her occasionally on the phone. I've emailed her. So I've kept in contact. I know my sister have kept in contact with her. I know my older sister has kept in contact. And I know my older sister has even gone to visit her. So, and she lives way up in Massachusetts. So there is, she's the type of person that, I don't know how to say this. She was too much of a good of a friend. Not just a stepmom, but as a friend that you just don't walk away from. She was there for our dad through his I want to say another word, but I'm going to refrain from saying it. But even through his illness, she was there for him. So we're going to be there for her. Now the second one is do not compare. So when you see a friend or relative, the first most basic response is to ask how they are doing and how they're feeling. And as simple as how you doing. It's been a couple of days since your mother or your father or your husband has passed away. So how are you feeling? And just a simple question. And let the conversation of that door open with them. Let them talk. Let them express how they're feeling and be there for them. And let the person talk without feeling that you're comparing or evaluating or judging the response or grieving or the grieving process or even their decisions. Now I'm going to talk about another comparison that I noticed that we Americans, and I'm going to say probably we as global worldwide do this, and it's a very bad habit that we do. We compare losses. That's a no-no. Your son might have died. My son died. My son died of a disease. Your son might have died from a tragedy, car accident, drug overdose, something like that, okay? Doesn't make your son's death more meaningful than my son's death. Or it doesn't make my son's death more meaningful than your son's death. It doesn't matter how our children died or how our loved ones died. Doesn't matter. They're no longer with us. And we have absolutely no right to compare losses. We lost somebody that we love dearly and that we care about dearly. That's what matters. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. The fact that someone died of one type of cancer compared to another type of cancer doesn't matter what type of cancer. Doesn't matter how they died. The fact that we lost them, that they're gone. We do not compare how they died or why they died. That's not our job to evaluate or to judge or to compare. Now, there's something else I want to bring up, and I hear this a lot. So please forgive me and be patient, okay? The other thing that I noticed that some people get really, really upset about, and I sort of understand some of the upsetness, okay? But I want people to think of this perspective in a different way. And it can be, it's a valid reason to be a little bit upset, but I don't think you have to get overly upset about. There are a lot of times that some people say things that they have no business saying to someone who's lost a loved one. I'm going to give you an example. Oh, I know how you feel. I lost my puppy the other day. It's so sad. I understand your pain. I understand how you're feeling. Now, I've seen and heard a lot of parents get really upset about this statement. And although I do understand the reasoning of some of it, but not all of it. So the person who said this to you is ignorant of not understanding that they should not compare in any way. But they're also ignorant because they don't know what to properly say to you. They don't know what to say and they don't know what to do, and they're just blurting out something because they're thinking they have good intentions of letting them know that they understand your grief and your pain. They don't, okay? Because I'm trying to not compare here. I love animals. My dog, Lizzie, I would cry my eyes out if something happened to her. She's been with me for 9 years. She was part of mine and Timothy's life. She was there for both of us. She's been there mostly for me. She's my baby. She became my family once I lost Tim. Well, she was my family, part of our family, even before Timothy died. But she became like my only family, immediate family after Timothy died. But I can't compare my loss of my dog to the loss of my son. Because I already know the loss of my child is far greater magnitude than it is to lose my dog. However, the proper thing to say to someone who would say something like that to you is, I'm sorry to hear about your loss, and walk away. Don't give them another chance. Don't give them the power to say any more. Just walk away as fast as you can, okay? Because they will try to say a little bit more, and I know they will. But just show some respect to them. Even if you don't think they had any kind of respect for you and your loss, just remember, they don't really get it. They really don't understand your loss. They may have never had children. They may have never lost any children. So they don't understand your loss. And they definitely don't understand your pain. Because your pain is because of your relationship between you and your child or whoever your loved one was. It's that relationship that you had with that individual. That's why you have that pain. But they don't understand that pain that you're enduring. So if you hear someone who makes that remark, just keep walking. Just say, I'm sorry for your loss, and walk as fast as you can. Anybody that comes to you and tries to compare the loss of your child and the loss of their animal, whether it's a bird or a hamster or a cat or a dog or a snake, whatever, or a horse, whatever it is, just say, respectfully, just say, I'm sorry for your loss, and run, okay? Because they don't know. They were never taught. And what they know is what their parents taught. And what their parents know is whatever their parents taught. And that's just the way society taught us. So they don't understand that you cannot compare those kind of losses. Apples and oranges. They may be sort of round, but they're two different colors and two different types of fruit. You can't compare. The next thing is don't look for sympathy for yourself. So that pretty much is like when you're listening. I know this is going to sound a little strange to you, but it does happen a lot. And some people talk more about their own sense of loss and their own grief and in an effort to express their sorrow and their empathy. Okay? But the other person, the griever, isn't in the best position to listen to your sorrows. Their mind is not going to listen to that. Okay? So if you really need to find somebody to talk to, don't talk to them. Go find someone else to talk to, okay? Because their mind, their heart, their body, physically, emotionally, mentally, and maybe even spiritually, they're feeling right now a little drained, and they don't want to have to dig out to find that message of what they need to say to you. So, and the last thing is do not patronize. Do not patronize. Have you ever looked down upon what the other person thinks you don't measure up? That you don't measure up to their standards or what their responses would be. You know what that feels like, don't you? Yeah, I still do. And you feel dependent and you feel like childlike. Oh, I still get that. And we wallow in self-pity. But let me tell you, my dear friends, that it happens all the time. But that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. It doesn't mean we should be doing it. That's why he's suggesting that we don't patronize people. Any kind of condescending response or behavior tends to reinforce the hurt and adds another layer. Yes, it does, folks. It adds another layer of inadequacy. And patronizing and pity basically shows that we don't care as much as we say. Does that make sense? Don't patronize the griever. And the griever try not to patronize us or trying to comfort you. I know, easier said than done, but I think it needs to be that dual respect for each other. So here are some of the do's that we want to do. Now this is a little bit long section here, so bear with me because it's going to be very enlightenment. And you're going to see why I want to share this with you and why I think it is very important that we understand all these little principles and ideas that we come together to learn to become this effective comforter so that we properly comfort the griever so that we don't compare, so that we don't patronize, so that we don't look for sympathy for ourselves, and because we don't want them to withdraw. We want to be there for them. So here are some positive guidelines that would be a great way to follow administering to a friend or a relative or a neighbor. And the first step is to simply accepting what has happened. Maybe it's the sudden loss of a loved one, sudden heart attack, car accident, something suicide, the sudden loss of a loved one. And you may want to use your own perspective of what your friend should be doing or what he should be responding. But remember one thing, you're only there to show love and support and comfort. You have absolutely no authority, absolutely no authority of how they should respond to you. You should suspend that kind of expectations because you're not their parent. You're not their immediate relative. You may not be their immediate relative. And what they're feeling and what they're dealing with is their personal, emotional feelings. That's theirs. They own it. It belongs to them. It belongs to nobody else but to them. Okay? And we need to, as the Bible teaches us quite often, to accept them and let them know that their feelings that they are feeling at the moment, their emotions. Remember the emotions I told you earlier that God created, instilled into us when He created man and woman? That to let Him know that His feelings are normal. And some of them may come to you and they apologize, crying, I'm sorry, I'm crying all the time. I'm sorry, I feel down, I'm sorry. They're in them right now in the days of confusion. We all know what it's like to lose somebody, especially if you lost somebody immediately. I went through Timothy's 21 years of his illness. And it was not like an immediate loss. And I still was like that confusion and that heartbreak. It's the natural thing that we have in us. I'm sorry, I forgot to close the windows. So you're hearing the rudeness of the country people in Florida that thinks that their trucks have to make all that noise. Yes, that was a pickup truck that drove by real fast. I'm sorry. Welcome to sunny Florida. Um, you would think that after 15 years on the job that I shouldn't be angry because maybe they retired or they got fired from their job or something like that. People still, you got to remember the 43 different types of losses that type of griefs that we all go through, and some of them will go through, even if it's not a death. Some people will go through a depression, a, a, a different type of sorrow, but a sorrow when they lose their homes, they lose their incomes, they have to move, maybe change jobs. People still go through those emotions. But one thing that I really love about how he teaches us to be an effective comforter, and I try to do this in my life with everybody. Doesn't have to have anything to do with grief. It's just a Christian duty to do. Is to be an encourager. And in one of Dr. Wright's other books that he wrote, it was one of his most recent books. He talks about something that really, really inspired me that I would never, ever forget. And this reminds me of it. He says the 7-letter word for encouragement is comfort. Yes, the 7-letter word for encouragement is comfort. So we need to be the encourager, be the comforter by accepting their feelings and the fact that they have them, and give them the gift of letting them face their feelings. Give them the gift of the fact of facing their feelings and, most of all, expressing them. Express your feelings. So here are the statements that I'm going to read to you because there's so many of them, but I want you to hear the examples of them so that you understand them. I don't want you to worry about crying in front of me. It's hard to feel this sad and not express them in tears. You may find me crying with you at times. Connect because you understand what they're going through. I hope you feel the freedom to express your sorrow through your tears in front of me. I won't be embarrassed or upset. I just want to be here for you. Just be present. If I didn't see you cry, I'd be more concerned. Your crying tells me that you are handling this in a healthy way. And if I had experienced what you had been through, I would feel like opening my eyes and letting the flood of tears come pouring out. Do you ever feel like that? I know I do. So one of the emotions that many of us go through is anger. And anger is another way of feeling that it's difficult for many people to express. And it's like what I tell a lot of people. People express so much of their anger. And one of the things they really express a lot of anger is anger towards God. And I'll tell them, look, it's okay to be angry. It's not a sin to be angry. And it's not a sin to be angry at God. What it is a sin is when you take that anger and you take it to use it to hurt someone or to hurt yourself. That's when it becomes an anger. Or you can take that anger and you can turn it around and do something positive with it. Do something in memory of your child or your loved one. Do something to do something good, positive in this world that we live in. Do you see the difference? But it's okay to be angry, and it's okay to express it, especially when you don't understand why or what just had happened. I've been hearing this all day today from the different guest speakers here that have been telling us stories about when they lost their loved one and the anger that they went through because they couldn't understand what just happened. But they validated their anger and they acknowledged it and they accepted it. They owned it. They took responsibility for it. And they didn't blame anybody else for it. It was their own anger. It was their own pain. It was their own grief. It is natural to feel angry and hostility towards anyone and everything that has to do with your wife's death. I feel angry too. Here's another one. And you must be angry that your baby had suffered and you can't do anything about it. Well, here it is. It is normal and reasonable to be angry and resentful when you lost your baby while others have healthy ones. You lost your daughter. You have a right to be angry and frustrated. And he keeps going on and on with different examples. But here's the key thing that I want you to remember. Your encouragement for your friend or your loved one, for him to express his feelings, will help them to understand that you're not going to withdraw from them. Reassure them that you're not going to leave because of their feelings, or that you're not going to talk because of the talk with him out of his feelings, the way he's feeling. Your support is going to remain constant. That's the part of comfort. That's the part of encouragement. That's why it's called support. And another positive way of responding is with touch. Now, some people I know are sensitive about being touched, hugged, so respect them and give them their space. But there will be other people who will desire it, and they will even come to you and ask for that hug, and they will tell you, I need that hug. A lot of times what I do online is when I know somebody I know who's lost a loved one, is I always say comfort and hugs. I'm sending you a virtual comfort and hugs because I know you need comfort, but I also know you need a hug. Because for some reason, that hug, that touch, to some it may not be comfortable, but to others, it is somehow giving them the assurance that to for some reason, for that moment, my mind just went blank in the word. It embraces that, it takes away that void feeling. And you want to also reassure them that you will be there with them, even if it means you staying in the house with them. And that no matter how much they're going to feel, that even if you're going to give them that space, that you're not going to leave them, and that just try never assume that they don't need you, because you're going to find out that by you being there and by them trusting you more and more, that they're going to start opening up and they're going to start talking to you. And many people you minister to is going to need that kind of touch and the touch of the heart. And since many people touching eases that emptiness of those inner pain. So here's something that I thought you would like to hear. A real cute story. And I got another one that's coming up real soon. So, when we go through an immediate loss in the first 7, 14, 21, 30 plus days or more, weeks or months, your mind is still on crutches. There is something awe-inspiring, silencing, and shattering about emotional pain that does leave one at a loss for words. And perhaps gestures are better. I've mentioned before my need for hugs, and I'm sure other people feel the same way. Human, physical comfort, no strings. I saw a cartoon once, no captions. It was on a vending machine, and the sign on it read, "Hugs, 25 cents." I wish I could have had one installed. Here are the 3 most important things That is part that I think that you will help you understand more of how it ties in to being an effective comforter. I'm really sorry I didn't have my slides on this. I worked so hard, 6 hours on those slides. And I think when I'm done tonight, this computer is going to see the trash bin. That means I won't be around tomorrow. So it's going to go down tonight. The gift of listening. One of the greatest gifts that you can give to a hurting, grieving person is the gift of listening. Now remember, listening is not just about ears. Listen. And in the previous chapters, he taught a whole chapter about the gift of listening. So when people know you hear them, they will trust you and they will feel safe with you. And if you're a good listener, they will be more apt to invite you into their lives. Those who listen to will also learn through your example to respond openly and lovingly to what you share with them. And some people will be attacked by the phonies, or they will feel guilty or ashamed because they didn't help. And even though they had no responsibility in the matter or couldn't have done anything of what had happened, let your friend share with you and then gently help them identify their statements, or if only in regret related. To open more discussions, you may want to make statements like this. What could you have done to prevent that from happening? What could you have done to prevent that from happening? Would that really have been possible? Are there others who could have done anything? If so, didn't they? And I can see how you might feel, but there really was nothing any of us could have done. Above all, don't say too much. Your presence speaks volumes. Just be present. Just be present. Even if you don't know what to say, and even if you don't know what to do, just be present. Because just being there. You know that saying, action speaks louder than words? Just be present. Even if you don't know what to say or what to do, just be there. Joseph Bailey, he wrote the book, The Last Thing That We Talked About. And it's a story about how he and his wife coped with the death of their 3 sons. He gave some advice. Sensitivity in the presence of grief should usually make us more silent, more listening. Sensitivity in the presence of grief should usually make us more silent, more listening. I'm sorry is honest. I know how you feel is usually not, even though you may have experienced the death of a person who had the same familiar relationship to you as the deceased person had to the grieving one. If the person feels that you can understand, he'll tell you. And then you may want to share your honest, not prettied up feelings in your personal aftermath with death. Don't try to prove anything to the survivor. An arm around the shoulder, a firm grip of the hand, a kiss. These are the proofs. Grief needs to logically reason them. And then he shares a story. I was sitting torn by grief. Someone came and talked to me of God's dealing, of why it happened, of hope beyond the grave. He talked constantly. He said things I knew were true. I was unmoved except to wish that he would just go away. He finally did. Another came and sat beside me. He didn't ask leading questions. He just sat beside me for an hour and more, listened. When I said something, answered briefly, prayed simply, left. I was moved. I was comforted. I hated to see him go. See the difference? Presence of grief should usually make us more silent and more listening. Now, here is the next thing. It's called patience and necessary character quality. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you that patience is the one virtue that I lack. I have no patience. When my computer was giving me issues earlier that I was late on and trying to get on and trying to get things to work right and finding out I was using the wrong link and blah, blah, blah. And I was just losing my patience. I was losing my patience over this computer. This thing that had this stupid machine. But it's a quality, a character quality, a virtue that God tries to teach us. And it's one that we need when we want to become an effective comforter. Because this is one character of quality that is necessary in ministering to a grieving person is patience. And you may hear the same story over and over in the same details and hear the same tears or see the same tears over and again. But this is normal for the grieving person, and it's even necessary. And this may become totally uncomfortable for you, especially when they express their anger. But remember, anger is the natural and it's normal and it's a healthy response as long as it's done within reasonable boundaries. Okay? So if he withdraws, don't push. It's part of the grief. And if he moves in and out of the real world, and he will progress at his pace, not yours. So I think people need to remember that when people grieve, they grieve on their timetable. Not mine, not yours, not on anyone's. when they are ready. If we push and if we keep saying the wrong things, it will take them longer. It will hurt them more and they will begin to isolate. That's why it is very important that we learn these guidelines so that we don't push the griever over the edge. We need to become sensitive, patient, caring, loving, supportive. Even if we're uncomfortable, with it, God calls us to minister to those who are grieving. Whatever type of grief they're going through, God calls us. And we must ask God to help us to be more loving, to be more kind, to be more patient, to be more understanding, to be more forgiving, to be more merciful. Because remember, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, they may be drained and their brain is foggy. And if it's something that happens suddenly, their brain, their everything is in a fog. They're numb, their body's in shock, and they're not going to remember every little detail. Part of grief is though he moves in and out of his real world, he will progress at his pace, not yours. And the author from the Beyond Grief talks about how no schedule exists for healing. A survivor is raw with grief and must endure much pain before healing takes place. And the only course that you can take to avoid appearing restless or annoyed with the survivor. It may be difficult for you to achieve a balance between acknowledging the loss that caused the survivor pain and maintaining proper perspective in the face in the face of that loss. You cannot help the survivor by blocking the reality or steering a survivor away from the painful reminders of the loss. You need to maintain that positive perspective while facilitating that grief by validating the person who died, talking about how the person touched or enriched the lives of other people when the opportunity arises, and mention the facets of life in which those activities or the people who gave the survival enjoyment. You are indicating to the survivor that there has been a part and there will always be a future with the same things, people and place in it. Do you see how fabulous this book is? Every time I read it or share it with somebody, it just puts more juice in me to realize how important it is for us and how important it is for God's calling for us to be there for these people. And Dr. Wright has hit it on the nails with over 50 years of experience as a family and marriage counselor. He dealt with his wife's loss. He dealt with his son's loss. He's dealt with divorces. He's dealt with so much. Plus, had to listen to all his clients. He's learned from experience and from all the education. Plus, he used to teach all this stuff too when he was a professor at a university in California. So he's bringing together all this research, all this experience of sharing with us so that we all understand that we can become better comforters. And one of the things that he also brought out in the beginning of the book, did you know, he said this himself, more than half of his clients that came in that door did not have to come to him if there were more people like us that were able to, more like good coaches like us, that were able to help people before they went to a professional. So if most of these people knew there were good coaches around that they can go and talk to, that can help them, he would open his calendar for more people that really did need him. I'm not saying that they didn't need him, because I'm sure he could have helped them maybe with underlying situations, underlying issues. But most of the people that came in were people that he's saying, like pastors, ministers, coaches, lay workers. If they had the proper training, like we all have now, it could have prevented a lot of people coming in. If they would have had people these clients could have gone to. And one of the things that he talks about us being able to practical help is, regardless of the type of losses, to recognize and to respond to different types of losses that people go through. And I think I talked about this earlier about the divorces, personal rejections, job, death, moving. And we need to be able to discover that our friend's personal situation and needs. We need to decide what we're willing to and able to do for them, realizing that we can neither do it all, nor should we, and that we can contact them and offer them for, to do the most difficult jobs and be there for them, be specific tasks, a lot of times, with all that confusion and immediate loss, I think I brought this up about, helping them with cooking, cleaning, doing dishes, doing yard work, making difficult phone calls, obtaining needed information regarding support groups, employment, all these different things that we can be able to go there and be there for them. And if the loss affected one person, then we need to minister to that person. But if it affected a family, a whole family, we need to be sensitive to all the members of the family. And what I mean by that is this. I know I've heard a couple of people today and on my podcast tell me that, when there was a spouse that immediately passed away, unexpectedly passed away, it's not just the wife or the husband that we need to minister to. But when there are children involved, especially little children, we need to be sensitive to the whole family and be there for them 100%. Okay? It's for the whole family. And especially try to discover what their social involvement is and see what you can do as far as that. So, where are we now? Sorry, I needed that. So I'm coming to the conclusion, and what I'm going to share with you are going to be different examples of the do's and don'ts. Okay? So you ready? It's Good thing we're recording this, so you can go back and listen to it and write it down. If you're anything like me, I like to listen first, and then I like to go back and re-listen to it and take my notes from there. So here are the do's, and here are the do nots. What not to do. Do not minimize your friend's pain with comments like, it's probably for the best, or things could be worse, or you'll remarry, or you're young, you can always have another one, or you're strong, you'll get over it soon, or you know God's in control. Comments like these might be attempts to offer hope, but to a hurting person, they sound as though you don't comprehend the enormity of what has happened, and they don't acknowledge that person's pain or loss. So what is best to do? You can offer simple, understanding statements such as, I feel for you during this difficult time, or this must be very hard for you, or I share your feelings of loss. And you can say, and I wish I could take your hurt away. Comments like these let the person know that you're acknowledging the pain and that it's okay to feel like this, to feel this way. What not to do? I'm so sorry. At the end of your sentiment, your hurting friend is probably sorry too, but he can't respond to that kind of a comment. So I know a lot of times the one thing that I see, especially on social network, is the only thing that most people say is, I'm so sorry, or I'm sorry. They don't complete the sentence to why they are sorry. So they need to listen to this suggestion of what best to do. So it's okay to say I'm so sorry, but then add, so I'm so sorry. I know how special he was to you. I'm so sorry. I miss her also. See what I'm saying? Add. I'm so sorry. I want to help you and I'm available anytime you need me. I hope that statement is true. You don't know how many times many of us hear that and don't see that. I'm so sorry. I've been praying for you. Is there anything specific I should be praying for? This gives the grieving person something specific and more satisfying to respond. What not to do? Don't say, is there anything I can do to help? Didn't I just say that? So here's what the best thing to do. Be aggressive. I'm serious. He says this in this book. I'm not saying that. Be aggressive with your willingness to help. So don't just say it. Be aggressive and be willing to help. Too many people make that remark. Is there something I can do to help? Call me if you need anything. Be aggressive with your willingness to help and ask yourself, what would I need if I was in that same similar situation? And then offer to do some of those things. You can be specific. I'm on my way to the store. What can I pick up for you? Would tomorrow be a good day for me to come and help you with the laundry? Would your children would like to come over and play with my kids tomorrow afternoon or this afternoon? Most of the time, a person in a crisis can't decide what they need. So offering specific helps. Offering the specifics helps. And besides, they probably don't. They probably she probably doesn't want to impose, so she might be hesitant to even bring anything up. Okay, so there's a thought. What not to do? Don't say you shouldn't feel that way. What's best to do? Encourage your friend to keep a journal or write down their thoughts and their feelings. And often, just seeing her thoughts on paper will help her deal with what she's facing. What not to do. Don't try to answer her question of why. Why him? Why me? Why now? Why God? You don't have any answer to this at this time. And the true answer may not even be apparent. Remember Job in the Bible? His friends didn't help. His friends didn't help at all. And when they went to visit him, and he told them, you are miserable comforters, all of you. Job was a wise man, and with everything that Job went through, he lost all his children, all his farm, his animals, his friends, everything. And in Job 16:2, he says, you're all miserable comforters, all of you. What's best to do is simply respond to why this question may be. I don't know why. I guess both of us will have to find some answers to right now, especially you. I wish I had all the answers to give you. Be sincere, be honest. Don't be afraid to tell them, I don't know why. But let's find the answers together. Find a way to make it healthy for them, that they have that support system to be there for them, that they don't have to do this alone. What not to do? Don't offer spiritual advice regarding why she's facing the problem, or tell her that she'll be a stronger person after going through this. We really don't know why tragedies happen, or why some people have to go through so much trauma. But here's what's the best thing to do. Agree when she expresses her feelings. And when she says it's not fear, confirm what she is feeling and say, yes, what happened to you does not seem fair, and it doesn't make much sense. Do this whether or not you share the same perspective. Oh, my friends, this goes on and on. Here's one what not to do. Don't quote Bible verses as a way to correct or to minimize or put your friend's feelings in a certain perspective. Saying God will give you the strength may seem impossible to them right now. Also, think very carefully before offering a passage. Make sure it can't be interpreted negative. Grieving people tend to see the negative sides first. And when you do offer encouragement, make sure it's heartfelt with the goal of comforting your friend. And what's best to do is give spiritual encouragement from your heart. Include Bible verses that have comforted you during your difficult times and let them know that. And also tell them that you're praying for them daily. And when you pray with them, keep it brief and reflect their feelings in the prayer. Focus on how much God understands their pain and fact that He wants to be their source of the amazing comfort. And never say I understand when you haven't faced the same situations. And telling someone that everything will be all right when you never know the depths of that hardship and the empty statement. Just be encouraging and hopeful. And what's best to do is to be honest about your experience. And if you haven't endured that particular kind of a tragedy, just say, I haven't been through that, what you're facing, but I want you to know I care about you and will support you through all the difficult times ahead. See, if you had a similar experience, a similar crisis, tell her briefly about it. And don't ignore this. What not to do is don't ignore their needs after the immediate loss. And Hubbard has subsided. She still needs ongoing comfort. But what is best to do is to keep in touch in the weeks, in the months, and maybe even years, especially at the critical times discussed at the book, such as the anniversaries. Let them know that you're still praying for them and ask how you really do and ask them how they're really doing and listen carefully and send thoughtful notes with encouraging words. And don't expect optimism or levity from your hurting friend. Realize that their heart is full of pain and turmoil. And let them know that you are here to listen to their feelings and that you want to be part of the healing of that pain. And it goes on and on and on. He gives so many examples of what we should not do and what it's best to do. But none of us walks alone. So Jesus experienced the loss and he experienced the pain. And he's with us all the time to sustain, to encourage, and to support us. Yes, life is full of losses, but he makes it possible to survive them, grow from them, conquer them, and move forward. That is the most wonderful thing that we can ever experience together. And my 8-week course that I've been trying to do, it covers the whole textbook, and it goes into much further depth of that. And I think it's well worth it. And I pray that in the future that it's like Kelly and quite a few other people said that how our churches need it, how pastors need it. I was surprised that how many pastors are not trained to help people through grief because they're not trained. Teachers, and I hate to even say this, even doctors and nurses, they become so immune to death that they don't know how to properly comfort the family. And it's one thing to maybe pat them on the back and say, I'm sorry. But what are you sorry for? You didn't, in their mind at this moment, you just did not save my loved one. And I know that sounds weird or strange, but it's true. So I I want you all to want to encourage you all to come back tomorrow and to come back Sunday and listen to more of our speakers. Sometimes you will hear some podcasts of some folks of what they're sharing with you, their stories, their experience, the training, the education they got to help them to get where they are now. And they got where they are now because they felt and they heard God's calling to be able to be there to help you or a loved one or a friend, a co-worker. And that's all we want to do is to help educate, to help train, to be there for you, to show love, to show comfort, for support. You can, I forgot, I don't have my slides up. So you can learn more about what I do and why I do it and hear my story and even hear my podcasts and a lot of guests I've had coming up. I had this last month and who are coming up. And I think you would feel really blessed to know a lot of these people that are coming in to share their stories. And they're sharing their stories because they want to be able to be there for you. They want you to know you're not alone. So you can go to my website and it's www.unpluggrief.org. And you will see I have quite a few things on there that my friend, partner Nancy, who was just on before me, that we've been working on together to try to expand our ministries together so that we can do far more in Florida. And .org. They have a .com, it's .org. And we want to do this because we do love you, we do care about you, and we do understand. Thank you. We do understand that what you are going through. Josh, who's part of IT, he was telling me that when he lost his mother and how much he misses her and what he's been going through to understand that loss. And I told him I lost my mother when I was 10 years old. That's about 50 years ago. And I'm not going to go into why or how she passed away. But I know for me, her memory, maybe 50 years ago, but I still have a lot of great memories of my mother. And I still remember a lot of good things about my mother. Yes, I do remember a lot of the bad things about my mother, but as I look back at some of those bad things, I can now sit back and laugh because now it's not so bad. It's more now a little bit more funny, but it's funny how we look back on things and how at the moment it seemed really bad and terrible, but now we can laugh about it. But I can sort of understand Joshua's loss, but I don't understand his pain because I don't know his relationship with his mother and what it was like. But from hearing from the little tiny bit I heard from him, I can sense that he had a very good relationship with his mother and that he cared and he loved her very much and that he knew that she did the same for him. So it's why we understand why he participates in this because he's doing this in memory of his mother. I'm not sure about Nathan, but I'm sure he had a loss, and we can still respect him on whatever his loss may be. And I know with Tony, he's had a lot of losses in his family, not just his son, but his parents, his brother. I think he said his sister and friends, his grandparents, and he feels alone, but he knows, that as long as he's with us, he's got a family right here. He's not alone. He's got a family right here. And I say this a lot to my Deshaun Muscular Dystrophy community as well. You know, that even for many of us who've lost our sons to the disease, we still are there as support to the families who still have their children, who still have their sons and daughters. And we still show them support. We still give them words of encouragement. And we even share them our experiences when we had our sons with us and what worked and what didn't work and what was the best equipment or the best beds or the best when you renovate your house for wheelchairs and stuff like that. we're still there. We're still a community. We're still a family. And even when there's a loss, we are all there together to support, to love. And I remember the first time, not the first time, when I was first starting to get more involved with the online support for the muscular dystrophy community. I used to wonder, my ignorance about grief before Timothy was ignorant, okay? Just like the most common in society today, ignorant. I didn't understand why some people just kept on going and going. But it wasn't until I lost Timothy I realized what these parents were going through and why. And it just, I began to realize that's where my ignorance was. And and I began to realize I was uncomfortable hearing them talk about their grief. But then when I lost my son, I began to realize what everybody else was feeling about me. But this is why I want to be able to, all of us want to be able to educate so that you don't become uncomfortable with our grief or anybody else's grief. So whether it's Kelly Nelson, whether it's Marty, whether it's Nancy, whether it's Tony, whether it's, there's so many people out there. And Jenny, well, Jenny, there are two different Jennys. But anyway, all of them, they are here this weekend and beyond for you. Okay? We are here for you. Whether you're a teacher, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a pastor, whether you're a nurse, whether you're a lay worker, whether you're a carpenter, whether you sell cars, I don't care what you do or who you are. We are here for you. Because right now, what all matters is being present. Just being present for you. Thank you for being part of the Global Grief Conference. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, April 30th. We have another whole day of wonderful speakers for you that will come and bring some stories and education and tools and tips to help you through your grief or your mental health issues. And we also will be here Sunday as well. I hope you all have a wonderful night and sleep well. If nothing's going on tonight, I'm not sure if we still have a night full of fun activities for you. I'm sorry we cannot be serving food. I mean, we could, but only we would be enjoying it, and that really wouldn't be fair for you. So go to your kitchens, have your pizza, whatever, but have a wonderful night, and we'll see you bright and early in the morning. And take care of yourself and stay safe. Good night.